All right. Good morning. We will call the Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023 meeting of the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority to order. If you would please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sylvie, could we get a roll call, please?
Broadway.
Here.
Howdeshelt.
Here.
Joyner.
Here.
Jones.
Here. Wonderful. Thank you. Next item on our agenda this morning is approval of the action minutes from our December 7th, 2022 meeting. The minutes were distributed electronically, included in our packets. Are there any questions from the board or adjustments that need to be made?
None. Joyner moves approval. Howdeshelt seconds.
Broadway.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Sylvie. Agenda review. Are there any changes that the board identified that need to be made in the agenda or requesting in the agenda? Any from staff?
Yes, Chair. You also have a new pink memo in front of you for item G, which is, again, about the I-80 auxiliary lanes and an adjustment to cost. David will cover those in his item G staff report out. Besides that, it remains unchanged.
All right, so noted. Thank you, Matt. All right, the next item on our agenda is public comment. That is an opportunity for individuals to speak. They have up to 3 minutes under public comment on issues that are not listed on our agenda today. The meeting looks to be, do we have anyone here in chambers that wishes to speak on public comment? And I don't see anyone online.
Nope.
All right, we will therefore close public comment, bring it back to the board for our consent calendar. We have one item on our consent calendar today. It's the SPRTA audited financial statements. Does the board, anyone from the board, wish to remove that item from the consent calendar?
No.
No. Anything from staff? No. Any comments on the consent calendar here or in chambers?
Nope.
There being none, I'll bring it back for an action.
Joyner moves approval.
I'll second. Jones.
Okay. Broadway.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Sylvie. Next item on our agenda today is item G, Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Allocation Request, and the increase for the I-80 Auxiliary Lanes project. I will note again, as Matt had mentioned, we do have a pink memo with that item today, and I believe, David, you're going to present that item.
Good morning. There is an abbreviated PowerPoint presentation, and I will quickly go through it because the slides are very similar to the slides that you previously saw. Today, we are asking you to increase the SPRTA Tier 1 project funding allocation from $10.4 million to not to exceed $15.7 million. Once again, project has two segments, eastbound and westbound. The eastbound is an auxiliary lane, the westbound is a fifth lane. And recap, cooperative agreement is needed. The board, PCTPA board approved the cooperative agreement. You all approved funding allocation of $10.4 million last spring. The PCTPA board today conditionally approved amending the cooperative agreement, subject to this board approving a funding allocation cost increase. And the amendment, the co-op amendment, not using the word cooperative, is needed to be updated in order to identify the new cost and funding due to the increase in the low bid to construct the project. All of this we've covered before. 6 bids received. Bids range 36 to 43 million. Low bid is 36.65. We need 40.71. There's 8.5 million and change needed, and its responsibility is different between the state and PCTPA, and PCTPA's share is 6.54 million, and then when you add in the PG&E cost overrun of 200,000, it comes to 6.74. And of course, So we need 6.74. We have a reserve of 1.47, thankfully. And so we're having to come before you today to ask for a 5.3 million increase in the SPRTA commitment to the project. And as I noted previously, Caltrans anticipates going to the CTC for their share in March. So we're recommending that you approve an increase in the SPRTA project funding commitment, funding allocation from 10.4 million to 15.7. The anticipated Tier 1 fee revenue is sufficient to cover the increase in the allocated cost increase, as well as currently programmed allocations. And the PCTPA and SPRTA Technical Advisory Committee concur with the staff recommendation. I will note that the change, in the pink reports here, all came at the 11th hour, and so the SPRTA Technical Committee met a week prior to the recent change by the state, and so I reached out to the individual representatives of the SPRTA TAC to inform them that the cost increase coming before this board today was increasing by $300,000, and so they were all okay with that. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, David. Any questions from the board?
Probably. So David, I guess what I'm curious about as we tap even further into Tier 1 fee revenues, what remaining future projects do we have that need to be covered by Tier 1 fees? What are our projections for future Tier 1 fee revenues?
Okay. I'm going to pass your question on to the Deputy Director because, Rick, it deals with the SPRTA program.
Understood.
Good morning, Director Joyner. So we did, as I mentioned before, we did look at the cash flow and the projects and the funding that we have currently laid out over the next several years and how that impacted that. There is a small amount of funding for Placer Parkway that's in Tier 1. The bulk of that's in Tier 2, but there is a small amount there. There is, I'm going to just round off numbers, about $1.5 million that we kind of have laid out at 8065 interchange over the next few years. Same thing in the next 3 years, roughly $1.5 million for Highway 65, because the bulk of that project, as much as that project's ready, we're far short of the 25 million. We did assume the 15.7 million for the aux lanes. We have the balance of the $10 million for the Rockland Road interchange. That's the amount that's currently approved in SPRTA. There are two $1 million payments left for Auburn Folsom Road. So as much as that project's complete, we have an agreement to pay a total of $8 million, and there's $2 million left to pay in that. That is what's basically currently laid out in the cash flow. And with that, as I mentioned, at the end of fiscal year 24-25, there's projected to be about a 1.7 million balance in the account that then grows over time. We don't have anything really programmed after that. It's one of the things on my list to bring back to the board in the spring or the fall when we really look, or spring or summer, we look at expenditures over the next 5 to 10 years. Part of that is a little predicated on what we end up doing with the fee update because it changes the revenue numbers. I did present this information to both TACs. One of the discussions we did have happens to be the Rockland Road interchange, knowing that the aux lanes are there. If that's something that needs to be funded, there'll be a funding challenge for the additional cost of the aux lanes. Similar note, 8065 interchange, the SPRTA fee program is only supposed to pay for a portion of that project cost, and so we don't have, it's relying on sales tax for a match. So it's not currently programmed. The timing of that's kind of a question as well.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair,
Thank you, great question.
wondering if there is utility, every pun intended, in having our state government affairs team discuss this with key legislative committees. And I just asked, you don't have to answer that, it's sort of a rhetorical question, but, you know, with PG&E's miscalculation of the costs, with their cost increase, with this constantly shifting fund balance between, you know, local and state, just would feel gratifying to have a voice in the legislature, because I'm sure we're not the only ones experiencing this.
No, I think that's a good comment, and we can definitely take that back and talk with state advocacy. We're set to have them come in and kind of have a kickoff because they have a new formed team, and this is something that we can agendize and talk with them about relative to PG&E, and then some of the other things we've all talked about sort of outside of this specific item relative to CAPTI, VMT, GHG, all the things I think you know well. So I will take that back and look to them relative to PG&E.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this item? There being no one present and no one online, we'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion or decision.
I don't think we have any choice. Given that, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve. Howdeshell seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second?
Broadway,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Solvi. Next item on our agenda today is a closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. Under negotiation is price and terms. Agency negotiators, Matt Click, Executive Director, and Rick Carter, Deputy Executive Director. Parcel 052-220-028, Aldous Gale Nord and John D. Tanqueray, trustees. And 052-041-002, Wells Fargo Bank National Association, which acquired title as Placer Savings and Loan Association, a corporation. With that, is there any public comment or questions on this item? There being none, we'll bring it back and we will move to closed session. The board has returned from closed session, provided direction to staff. There is nothing to report out. We will now move to the executive director's report.
Nothing in addition, Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. Next item is board direction to staff. Do we have any requests of staff today?
None.
There being none, we have informational items that were included as the SPRTA TAC meetings, minutes from the meeting. And with that,
Could I, through the chair, and I
Yes.
apologize, we did mention it in closed section, but just as a reminder, we might have a potential April 12th meeting regarding the real property issues.
yes,
So,
thank you.
Just for the record.
Appreciate
Apologize,
that,
thank
Matt. Thank you. No, that's great. Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.